with our pre-meeting. So we'll start off with Employee Mental Health Services, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. It's good to be with you tonight. Pursuant to your request, we have a bit of a briefing, if you will, as it relates to current activities that the organization is undertaking as it pertains to mental health services and what we're trying to do, as it were, with respect to our employees. So I've asked 3 segments of our employee group to come forward. A team from our police department, Chief Solberg from the fire department, and then Ms. Belser as it relates to the, the general employees, if you will, and the services we try to extend on that side of the organization. So with that, if I could defer to the police department to start us off, and then we'll go in that order if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So for the Casper Police Department is actively developing a robust employee wellness program that addresses officer wellness holistically. This is a multi-tiered approach that began with peer support groups and progressed into individual group counseling. Furthermore, there's a strong emphasis on acquainting new officers and their families with physical and mental demands of law enforcement profession. So some of the things we do, and I don't want to take too much from Captain Brown because it's kind of his brainchild moving forward. Some of the things we've started doing is in our post academy and new hire academies, we try to inoculate the new officers, if you will, of some of the stressors they're going to see, and try to encourage them that seeking counseling isn't a bad thing. We try to encourage them to speak with their spouses, try to encourage them to have their spouses reach out to us if something's bad going on. Some of us that grew up where, as adult males, we don't cry, and our dads would say, boys don't cry, things like that. And so we have to get past that stigma and allow people to grieve a little bit, whether that be in a group setting or an individual setting. So we've tried to open up those doors and bring those kind of environments in, and I'll let Captain Brown speak to the rest of that.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So I'm Captain Brown. I currently work for the Patrol Division. I've been working for the City of Casper for 22.5 years. So basically, I'd like to kind of start with a quote. So from Sigmund Freud, he said, "Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth in uglier ways." This is something that all first responders are dealing with. And a more impactful statement was one I heard yesterday. There's a simple reason why law enforcement officers have some of the best pensions in the country. They don't live long enough after retirement to fully collect them. So when we're dealing with this problem, we have to take a systematic approach. And I'm a strong believer in the scientific method. So we have to ask our question, is there a problem with mental health within the police department, first responders? Yes, there is. The second point is actually doing research. So I had to conduct research. So when we're talking about mental health, it's a holistic approach like the Deputy Chief has talked about. We're talking physical health and mental health. So, because when you look at the data collected, the average law enforcement officer, when it comes to time to suicidal issues, is usually around 15.5 years. So that's an officer that's had a significant amount of history and has saw a significant amount of traumatic events. There's also another thing when we have to look at the physical point, though. The average person that we have sitting here, average expectancy for you to have a heart attack is 69 years old. The average expectancy of a police officer to have a heart attack is 49 years old. Big discrepancy, big difference. So when we're collecting data and we're doing studies, we're taking studies from bigger departments, cop studies, scientific studies that are actually published to figure out how we go about this. And with that, I've started our preliminary approach. So we've contracted with Dr. Post. As you know, we had her come during the initial traumatic event, but we also brought her in for a secondary time to actually come in to do some follow-up with people and some personal counseling. So we tried to build a counseling, and Sergeant Winters is also back. Every Thursday, he does a counseling where he just has guys that come in, talk about issues. So not only do we have weekly Thursday night counselings, but we're still bringing in professionals to do some follow-up and personal counseling. But with that, I also saw that's a much broader spectrum and that I need to work with the community. So it started with Dr. Raful. He's currently a cardiologist within the City of Casper, and he's going to be coming in on November 10th and November 16th. With him, he's bringing nurses to take everybody's blood pressure, to make sure a lot of officers have high blood pressure. Many of us are around stroke level. So like I said, with an average expectancy of a heart attack of 49, I want to get to the root of the problem, make sure our officers are physically capable of even doing physical fitness. The second point is I have an actual health and specialist and actually a diet specialist, which Carter Napier recommended, Dr. Lockwood. He's done a lot of work with special forces. He's done published studies on energy drinks and a lot of things that we use that kill us. We can just put it point blank, kills us. So I'm also trying to arrange studies currently with sleep studies. So I put out a survey to the police department. Average sleep for a police officer, 4 to 6 hours. And as we all know, that is not medically congruent or good for health. So in order to attack the mental aspect, I've also got the physical aspect. And what we'll see right now, just department-wide, we have several officers that are doing serious surgeries, whether back surgeries, leg surgeries. So I also identified that, and I'm trying to get together with the community right now. If you've done a study, yoga, some out-of-the-box picture kind of stuff, 80% reduction in officer and first responder injuries doing yoga. So I'm taking a whole holistic approach at it. My main emphasis is the mental aspect, but why are officers having a lot of mental issues? One of them is myself. Your body starts breaking down. You have several injuries. You have chronic pain, which leads to mental issues that you're trying to hide. You can't do what you used to be able to do. There's exterior issues like officers having to deal with what's going on within the community, traumatic events. So we want to start from the beginning. I also worked at career services. So right off the bat, when we get a new police officer, we've already done an officer survival class and a PTSD class and an officer involved shooting class. We've really concentrated on the officers. Now we're concentrating on the family. So we've got a book that the family members can actually read to understand what the law enforcement officer is going through. And I'll also be building a class just to give the family kind of idea. What is your husband or wife or significant other going to deal with during this? How are some ways that you can deal with it? And I also want to bring a psychologist in to partner with me and tell these guys, hey, your husband or wife or somebody, significant other, brother, sister, when they come home angry or they've been through a traumatic event, how can you help them? So we've got to start from the beginning. From there, like I said, bringing these classes, monitoring officers' health, getting our officers healthy enough to where through yoga, through physical fitness, we can improve their mind and body in that sense. And the most important integral part is just mental health. And like I said, we've continued to bring in Dr. Smith for follow-up appointments. We've got those sources out that they're reaching in the community. But as you'll see in a lot of these studies and a lot of departments that are a little bit ahead of us on the game, for when I was in Staff and Command College, a lot of departments have their own in-house psychologist, which helps significantly with officers. A lot of our officers on 12-hour shifts, how do they go see the psychologist during those 12-hour shifts? A lot of departments require a psychological screening. So for me, I took a psychological screening July 6, 1999. I have not had another one yet unless I go in for my own psychological screening. So some departments have went to every year. Some departments have went to every 5 years. But I really think on the mental health aspect that we need to do more. And what I would like to see is, and the chief could speak more to this, but having an in-house counselor on hand for first responders, partnering with other departments within the community, maybe to share the cost, maybe Mills and Evansville. I'm sure everybody receptive in the fire department. But I think together, we just can't wait for that. What we've done now is build what we need to build, but that's my dream to see in the future, just help these officers, especially on those 12-hour or 10-hour shifts. A lot of times they just don't have the access. It'd be great if they could take their lunch hour and just go in when they've been through a traumatic event and they can go see a counselor. So that's my cliff notes for 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions?
Councilman Cathy.
When you're when you're recruiting new officers, I know you mentioned handing out or giving the books about the families and what they can expect to the new recruits, but do you do that before they wind up becoming officers so that the family and everybody really fully understands what that job can do to you?
No, that's an exceptional question, sir. So we're just starting this with our new group. The problem of us as police officers is we concentrate too much on the police officers, and we got the family in the background. So this is actually a trial. I'd actually got the book, and what I did was I had two officers just read the book as spouses to see what they thought of it, to see if it was a book that was congruent. So what it is, it's going to be kind of a welcoming thing for the families. So the family's going to come. They're going to get a gift package with Dr. Gil Martin's Officer Survival, critical book for law enforcement officers. The book I Love Cops that introduces a family for traumatic events that the officers are going through. and then just some other stuff from the city of Casper to say, hey, you're welcome here. But during the post-academy, they'll have the class on traumatic events and PTSD, officer-involved shootings, where we bring in officers that have been involved in officer-involved shootings. But I also want to see a family portion on that where we can call in the family, because I know they have a lot of questions. A lot of people are switching for some profession that they don't even know what we deal with. The family should be able to ask their questions.
Oh, and as a follow-up, that's why I was asking that,
Yes.
is because I don't think a lot of the younger people really fully understand what you folks go through on a daily basis. And as you have stated, that takes a toll. And I still remember the chief's words from the services here a while back that, you know, we can replace the outside armor, but it's that inside armor. And I don't think a lot of the people really understand the toll that takes on them. And so that's why I was wondering if some of this information was being given out when they're going through their physical and their first psychological evaluation, to be able to fully understand what they're going to go through in the next 15, 20 years if they make a career out of it.
I couldn't agree more, but I'd add a portion of the chief's thing. What stabilizes that armor is family. So we don't want the family worn down with having to deal with the issue, but how many times have you saw somebody thank their family for going through a traumatic time? So we need the family strong too, so.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain, for being here. Appreciate it. And thank you for the work that you're doing for your brothers and sisters. One of the things that I think that we can say, and part of it is going to be some opining, but it's also going to be, I think, some level of what we can do for you guys as a council. I think the first thing is that none of us on the council, apart from the mayor, understand what the level of stress and level that you guys have to go through on a day in and day out. And so I think we know that, unfortunately, when the tragedy strikes, it seems like then all of a sudden, you know, we're like, oh, everybody, we got to do something now. I mean, lay people, not the police officers, as you know, what you're going through. So I think the council, and this is my part saying, I think as a council, we need to be proactive in the sense of how we can, number one, financially support the police when it comes to this, what we can give to help utilize their toolbox. You know, Captain Brown mentions having an in-house counselor. What does that look like? Cost sharing with other agencies. How does that look? I think that's something they need to look at. But really kind of giving it to the experts to be looking at doing what needs to be done and having that conversation. But I think the council should commit and be able to say, how do we support that? And a lot of ways we're going to do that is going to be financially. And so I think that needs to be a commitment that we need to look at. And I know Carter always struggles with that part of it, but I think a part of it is that the reality is I don't think we can worry about that any longer. I think it's time for us to kind of look at that and say, how can we help you guys? And so I know that's more of a comment than a question, because I think the work that you're doing is fantastic, but it's needed. And I think I'd like to commit this council to making sure we support you 100% however we can.
Appreciate it, sir.
Councilman Nell.
Thank you. I actually started researching this before the incident that we had within our city. I've been on this for about 2.5 months now. And I've met with the chief, I've met with the sheriff, I've met with Evansville and Mills and the hospital staff. Everybody's interested in doing this. And I think we can make this extremely affordable. The nurses and the doctors that are seeing the trauma that's coming through there is having the same effect on their people. The other police departments, the sheriff's department does have some stuff in place, but the new sheriff is more interested in some of the stuff I've gathered. So if you're interested at all, please reach out to me at any time. I've got tons of information. I've even had Carter on conference calls with deputy chiefs from other departments, and like I said, I've been doing this for a while now. So if you're interested at all in any of the information I've gathered, trauma-specific type of counseling, I could certainly point you in some good directions.
For sure. And before we move on, I just want to identify. So this was Lieutenant Dundas' passion. He'd probably been working on it for a year, and probably 3 months prior to this, we were working on it pretty hard, but I think Lieutenant Dundas actually has his credit, has his due credit, should get it for it. So he was working on it for a year. It was his passion. I mean, I connected on him, and we're two hard charges, so we want to make this work, but he definitely deserves the credit for starting this up.
Councilwoman Ingebrigtsen.
If counseling was provided if it were provided and accessible, would the officers actually take advantage of it?
That's another exceptional question. So, you know, we're bullheaded people. We think we can fix ourselves. That's why we're in the job we're in, because we're here to solve people's problems, and we always never perceive ourselves as victims. So the boxes add up in our mind, in our psychological mind, and we just think we can deal with it. So I think a lot of it is just having accessibility. So, you know, our officers' first dedication is to the street. So they go, you know, I don't have enough time to get it between family and job. I just don't have the time to fix myself. But I think if we could afford the opportunity during their work time and actually allow it on a lunch break where they can come in and do something like that. With Dr. Smith, when she first came up, there wasn't a lot of response. So I went down and talked to a lot of the teams and said, hey, you guys need to go in there. If you feel for anything, not even for what happened, if you feel anything you need to talk to, do it. But I think accessibility is a key component, because we're time managers and we're constantly, you know, every 5 minutes of time, my officer's trying to figure out how we can get his reports done, how we can help this victim, but he doesn't have time for himself. So I think we need to make that time accessible during the work time. So.
Just as a follow-up, I know that self-care, a lot of men think that that is a woman thing. But I think that we really need to highlight that. And so, like, I've teamed up with the first responders where they give the baskets and things. Yes. And so, and we're going to start providing them floats. And so I'm donating several floats probably for the month of November towards all the baskets, but just little things. And I think if we change that stigmatism, possibly just letting everybody know that, you know, taking care of yourself is very important, whether you're a man or a woman.
I couldn't agree more. And the statistics prove that you're right on that.
Appreciate your service. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Councilman Gamros.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Captain Brown, for your presentation. Totally on board with the initiatives you guys have begun at the police department. Very excited to hear about a holistic approach, you know, mind, body, and soul, and focusing on diet, all super important. So I'm excited about the direction you guys are heading, and would absolutely support, you know, us having further discussions about in-house counseling. Maybe not a question specific to you, but since we brought up, or Councilwoman Engebretson brought up, whether folks would use it or not, I was a little underwhelmed, I guess, at the current utilization. It looks like we have 21 hours of EMDR services for the city of Casper since January of this year. And then there were some numbers January through September of this year and last year, and it was only just around 100 hours. And considering the number of city employees we have, I thought that was remarkably low. And so I don't know if that's an access issue or if this is a voluntary program. You know, I guess I just thought, again, considering the amount of city employees, those were really low numbers. And so whether it's lack of accessibility or lack of funding to provide those in-house services, I would love to see those numbers higher. You know, I think it's totally appropriate that those numbers should be higher if people are practicing the appropriate self-care and having those routine evaluations to make sure they're mentally, physically, and, you know, spiritually fit. So I'm excited to hear about what you guys are doing, and agree with Vice Mayor that we should do what we can on council to support those initiatives. Thank you.
Anybody else? Captain Brown, I just wanted to, first of all, applaud you guys for doing exactly what you're doing and getting this up and running. And as you said, I know that you had this in progress. Danny's been working on this. The fact that officers don't ask for help, they always bottle it up, and we know that. And it doesn't have to be a traumatic incident that takes place. It could be the simplest thing when they finally break down. But a lot of times that does go home too, and the family's the one that suffers along with them. And I appreciate the fact that you're taking the approach of not only trying to help fix the officer, but help the family through it also. The reason I asked Carter to have you come here tonight was just simply because of the fact that, you know, we can all sit up here and have all the ideas in the world, but you guys are working on it, and you know exactly the direction you're going. And that's what I wanted to hear tonight is, where are you going, what do you need, and how can we help? And that's really kind of the bottom line to it. I don't think any one of us can come up here and fix it. We can certainly send people your direction, and whether they fit into the program or don't fit into the program, that's to be seen. But I would rather take that approach and supporting you and giving you what you need than sitting up here and trying to fix it ourselves. So I appreciate it, and as far as I'm concerned, I think I speak for a lot of people on council. Whatever is needed, bring it to us, and we'll do what we can to make it happen.
I would just add on that last quote, Chief McFeeters also brought up a poignant point when I was doing evaluation with him. His main goal is to make sure that our officers get through 20 years healthy and able to enjoy their retirement. I mean, the quote I expressed earlier shows that that's not the case, that, you know, a general officer's life expectancy is 10 to 15 years after his retirement. And as you know, Mayor and myself, we've been with the department for 2 decades. A lot of officers haven't made it to retirement, many for medical reasons or other issues. And then we also have to look at the quality of life for many of our veterans. And many of the quality of life, many of our veterans, many that gave many more years than me, 30 and 40 years, are suffering right now. So probably the last piece on that is, I think, you know, as a department, we've talked about a wall of honor just when we build our new police station to, you know, recognize the service that people have given us. But also, I think we need to do a little bit more job of taking care of those veterans that gave us honorable service. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, City Council. For almost 2 years now, we at the fire department have provided a peer support team. The training was provided through the International Association of Firefighters. The training is designed to be a gateway, so to speak, for other city programs that would be available. So certainly anything we come up with in the city, we'll be able to get that to our folks as they need it. One of the interesting things about firefighters as opposed to the police officers is the firefighters, after incidents, especially significant incidents, can come back to the firehouse, 3 or 4 of them sit around the table and have these informal debriefs. And that goes on 24 hours a day while they're in the station. And certainly I think it helps over the career where a police officer is going to get back in their car and go back out on patrol by themselves, most likely. So again, from our perspective at the fire department, we'd like to continue the peer support program since it is essentially a gateway, like I said, to other services that are available both in the city and then in the community. And really, that's kind of where we're at in the fire department right now. Certainly, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Councilmember Pollock.
Thank you very much. I'm curious to get a little more of your perspective on what the usage of that program is currently, if you feel like lots of people are accessing that, or if there are barriers to that access that you're experiencing right now.
Well, I think even in the short amount of time that we've had it in place, there's still that stigma or that barrier of people wanting to talk. I think it's happening informally. Now, as far as when they talk in the station, firefighter to firefighter, do they go seek additional help beyond that? I don't have any statistics or data on that.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Chief. Tracy?
Wasn't sure with time. It was okay. So, Mayor, council members, you saw the list and the attachment of all the resources that are available to our employees. So that's our general employee population, as well as fire and police personnel as well. Good points as far as accessibility and our usage. To me, it needs to be higher. The executive director at 3 Trails and also Cigna, which is our medical insurance provider, telehealth has been something that they think is one of the things that will remove that barrier for accessibility. So that is a good thing that I think employees can do it in their homes at their own convenience, not have to go to, you know, a certain place or risk being seen going to a certain place for services. So that is something that we think that will be helpful. Another thing is that our safety specialist and our human resources specialists have teamed up to try to do safety stand downs with our supervisors to try to get out in the work groups and actually help facilitate some of the discussions, because it's hard, especially with male-dominated different industries where even like public services, where people don't even want to talk about it, right? They don't even want to have a conversation. So the 2 specialists in HR and risk management are hoping to get out and try to equip supervisors with some information to help have those conversations and check in with their employees. So we're hoping that we can make a difference with that as well. Those are the two things that I thought that I would just cover that would be a little bit different. If you have any questions on the resources or the utilization that I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
Councilman Neal.
One of the points you brought up is actually right on point. On the phone call Carter and I were in with one of the larger departments in the country is having an on-site professional, or, you know, having them have an office in the building is such a deterrent for these guys to want to walk in that office and be seen by everybody else, including their superiors. And so I think the captain's on the right track. I think it's going to be more important to have support for them other than somebody having an office in the building, because it's just such a deterrent. And all the big departments are learning that now. So your telehealth, I think, from everything we heard in that conversation, is right on the button, right on the money. So.
Councilmember Pollock.
Is there, it mentions in the memo that we offer these services to employees and family members at no cost. Is there a limit to the number of sessions that people get? Is it sort of case-by-case basis? How is that determined? Is it just whatever insurance will cover? How is that, what does that look like?
I think it depends on Cigna, if it's under that benefit or if it's at Three Trails like EFAP. I don't think there's a limit. I will double check and get back to you, but I don't think it is limited on the Three Trails EFAP. And that's a co-op that, you know, it's been in place over 20 years, but I think Casper College, the school district, Wyoming Medical Center was in it, and I think they recently changed. But I don't think it's limited with that. They can refer on to a specialist if needed. But I think with our Cigna health benefit, there is limits on that.
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Thanks, Tracy. I think part of the utilization we were just talking about, I know Councilman Gamroth brought this up about the utilization of it. I think of programs and the benefits. You know, Three Trails is free for employees, which is amazing, to be able to get counseling for those types of things. I think a part of it too that we probably need to look at is also maybe a continued awareness and education program of mental health. Unfortunately, I think the stigma of mental health, especially I think what Captain Brown has said in his statement, that especially in men, primarily mental illness or mental health issues is seen as a weakness, or maybe not even relatively even there, but it's real. It's something that is affecting the state of Wyoming, where we're in the top 5 generally nationally, the suicide rates for 15 to 25-year-olds. And so it's something that we've been battling for years, in the years that I've been doing prevention education in the community. And so it's something that we need to continue to do, and maybe look at how we as a city organization bring that attention, and also talk about educating employees that it's okay if you're struggling, it's okay to get help. It's not a weakness to have to walk into a counselor's office and see a counselor. It's a sense of, you know, there's some courage to have to do that and to deal with your demons and be able to do that. So whatever we can do to support this, I think it's 100%, and getting that word out that mental health is real, and it's something that a lot of people in our population face. So thank you.
Thank you. And one more thing I would like to add is that I do think, you know, we try to give out information, and, you know, it just, people don't read it, you know. But the crisis, the moments you're in the crisis is when you need it, and that's where we're lacking. That is where we are lacking. So if we're looking at resources, that is something that I think we have identified that that's a shortage in our community of professionals that can help with the crisis mode. You know, it takes on average 10 years for somebody to work up to getting help, making that first appointment with Three Trails EFAP. But when they need it is when they have that crisis, and that's where we're lacking, I believe, the most in getting to those people when they're ready for it. So, thank you.
Okay. You have anything else on that, Mr. City Manager?
I sure don't. Thank you for the opportunity to fill you in on that information. I appreciate that.
Okay. Anything on the agenda review?
Mr. Mayor, I'd gotten a couple questions throughout the day today about a couple items, and we're prepared to answer some of those questions if it would help the council this evening.
Okay.
One of which was with regard to the item on consent pertaining to a water tank painting project, and those are fairly expensive. Generally speaking, that type of a lining project is a lot more technical and structurally significant than most would think, and so consequently, we don't have a lot of vendors that actually apply for that locally and that sort of thing, or even within the state. However, we do have a preference in Wyoming that we're allowed to give in terms of a margin for Wyoming contractors should we have that competitive nature between Wyoming contractors and non-Wyoming contractors. That margin is pretty small, and if indeed non-Wyoming contractors still beat that margin, we are obligated to take the low bidder in projects that all of you have probably seen come to pass. And so that tends to be the misunderstanding with some of these things, and generally speaking, when there's a low bidder, we got to go with them. That's the problem. So other than that, are there other questions about that project?
Councilman Nell?
Not about that one. So I'll let that finish. I'm sorry. I thought you meant any other questions, period. So I'll wait.
Councilman Gamros?
Thank you, Mayor. No questions, but thank you for the clarification on that, Carter. That was something I had reached out to city staff earlier today about. I noticed there were no local bidders. Of the 9, none were local, and so my guess was that it was kind of a specialized service, and so I appreciate you clarifying for that as far as the decisions to contract with people, not only the preference for Wyoming bidders, but state statute, our obligation to go with that lowest bidder. Just appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Councilman Nell?
Yes. There's an item on the consent agenda tonight, and I thought I should probably ask about it now, and that is asking for almost $11,000 for a golf cart to be used at the cemetery. And since we own and operate a golf course, is there a reason we can't allocate one golf cart out of that fleet to the cemetery?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Nell, I appreciate the question. I would say that the term golf cart is a little misleading, and I recognize that it was in the memo worded that way. The reality is we're talking about a utility cart, which is more like a Cushman or a Gator, if you will.
Bed and all that.
With a bed, yeah, exactly, to carry tools and those kinds of things. So I would call it more like a UTV than I would a golf cart.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so you bet. I appreciate the question. We do have Mr. Coriel here tonight if you want more detail than that, but that's what I would suggest is something to consider.
Okay, anybody else? All right, anything else on agenda review?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get right into the meeting then. So before we begin this evening, I'd like to remind everyone to silence their cell phones at this time. And I now call the November 2nd, 2021 regular council meeting to order. If we could depress.
All members are present.
All right. Council meetings are also televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. Could you please join the Vice Mayor in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the October 19th, 2021 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on October 24th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Engebretson, second by Councilmember Pollock. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Councilmember Johnson voting aye, and Councilmember Brunel voting abstaining, and all others voting aye, motion passed.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the October 19th, 2021 executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Kathy, second by Councilmember Pollock. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Councilmember Brunel abstaining and all others voting aye, motion passed.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the November 2nd, 2021 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Pacheco, second by Councilwoman Ingebretson. Any abstention or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we ask the following. Please state your name and address. Direct all questions or comments to the mayor and only the mayor. No personal attacks on staff or council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to our city manager. Questions posed by speakers may or may not be responded to by council members. Presentations will be limited to 5 minutes, and duplication of speakers will not be allowed, nor will time extensions be permitted. Please note that public hearings and ordinances each have their own comment period, so please hold your comments on these items until we reach them. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Joe Arnold, and I live at 1869 HY Avenue, behind the old Ridley's, the new project for the Ace Hardware, Once Upon a Child, and Backdoor Liquors and Lounge. I do not profess to be a expert at code and reading city codes, so please bear with me. But I'm mostly concerned about my privacy and my declining property value. I'm here this evening to bring light to what I think are numerous violations of the Municipal Code Title 16 and 17, and possibly improprieties by city employees. Until an investigation is complete, I hope that maybe we halt this project until things can be checked. But under Title 17-12-150 site plans, under Section F, Paragraph 2, a sign must be posted within 3 days and remain posted for 10 days to serve public notice. The sign should be visible from public roadways. And I quote, "In addition, a written notice describing the project and identifying the date public comments are due shall be mailed and delivered to the owners of private real property within 300-foot radius of the perimeter of the project area as shown on a site plan. The notice shall be mailed within 5 working days and receiving the complete site plan application. As of today, a written notice has not been mailed to not one of my neighbors or myself. Neither has St. Anthony's Tri-Parish Church or School and the Lady of Fatima Church have received any notification whatsoever. And the daycare center at the other end of the street. And I'm not really sure if a sign was posted because I live there and I've never seen it. So I think that was a failure. And under Title 17-12-150, Section E, Paragraph 2E, a traffic study shall be prepared in accordance with Section 1620.80B. When I met with city representatives in Johnson Restaurant Group, this was 3 or 4 weeks ago, the city wasn't aware there were 2 unmarked intersections south of the project, one at HY and 19th, and also HY and, sorry, I don't remember the name of the street. But a week later, after we met, amazingly, stop signs went up at both intersections. So, and one of the intersections is really bizarre intersection. It really needs to be redesigned, okay? So, I'm sorry, I lost my place here. Had a traffic study been done, that would have been identified long before I mentioned it to the city. So I don't think there was a traffic study done whatsoever. If they had, they would have also learned that at about 3:30 every day, when the school lets out, parents come to pick up their kids, and they go a block down HY Avenue picking up their kids. It turns out that when I met with the Johnson Group in the city, we discovered that not only would there be one back door, there's going to be two doors. And these doors are for access to the lounge. It's less than 50 feet from my front door, okay? And so during that same meeting, we discovered this, the fact that there's going to be two doors, not one. And all along, Mr. Johnson told me there was going to be no access from the back, and then I discovered there would be. And he's designated 6 to 8 parking spots at the southwest corner of the lot, which is right across the street from the school, for parking for the lounge, okay? So that means that people that go to the lounge all day will be getting out and walking to their cars and mixing with the children getting out of school. And I asked you, what happened to the drug-free zone? And I also asked you, each member, are you comfortable with the fact that somebody might get intoxicated and run over one of these children? And so there also needs to be there's a Title 17 Appendix C, there has to be a buffering zone, and that's the most important to me. The first paragraph reads, goal reads, I quote, to encourage the most appropriate use of land and conserve and protect the privacy and value of adjacent uses. It goes on to state buffering is required between commercial and residential developments. I got 50 feet of street and that's it. And I asked Mr. Johnson if he would provide me off-street parking and a privacy fence, and the answer was, of course, no. And I asked that in front of the city. And
Sir, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up because it's over 5 minutes now.
I'm sorry. And so basically I was told that I wasn't important, my house wasn't important, it had no bearing whatsoever in the project. So I guess that's, thank you for listening to me. I think it needs to be investigated. And so is there any questions that anybody might have? Because
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. We appreciate your coming up here. I guess it's not so much as a question for you, but I guess what direction do we go in a case like this, Carter? And when it sounds like you've had a conversation already with city officials and the Johnson Group, I guess I would want some maybe direction of what maybe the next thing. If I know Councilman Gamroth probably has some questions and stuff, but maybe I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but just wanted to see.
Mr. Mayor, certainly what we could do, Mr. Vice Mayor, is look into some of the questions that we've taken note on tonight. We are fortunate that we have Mr. Collins in the crowd who, has listened to the comments as well. And so I would ask that have an opportunity to reconnoiter with Mr. Collins and bring you back a report if you'd like, that we can send in an email or a memo, or even in a work session, have another conversation. In any case, I'm interested in trying to understand some of these details as well, and we can go from there. If that pleases the council.
It does. Councilman Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Carter. I'm totally on board with that. Thank you also, Joe, was it? I just wanted to say thank you. Appreciate you sharing your comments with us this evening and for citing, coming prepared, citing city ordinances to support your claims and stuff. And so I'm sure Carter will,
I'd be glad to leave him my notes so he'd have more information if you'd like. You can just have those. And may I make one other comment on the police department? I'm a veteran Air Force, a retired air traffic controller. And as you know, many air traffic controllers went through the same thing that they go through. And myself personally, I was with a crew of 6 or 7 people that I retired with at Portland Air Traffic Control Tower. And of those 6, only 2 of us are left. 2 committed suicide, and the other 2 have died at a very young age, within months of retiring. So as a taxpayer, I have full support for the police department and what they're doing. So I'd hope that you guys would support them as well.
Thank you. Councilman Nell.
Sir, I appreciate you bringing that to us. You just sit, you're fine. I live 3 blocks from your house. I think Poplar separates our wards, so you're not in my ward. But I know some people would say, well, you bought a house right next to a commercial district. Yeah, next to a grocery store. And now you got a bar, you know, right at your front door. So I understand what your thinking is, and maybe there's some compromises. We can get them to put a fence up across there, a complete privacy fence. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that Carter will look into it for sure. So.
Is there anyone else who would like to address council? Good evening.
My name's Cora Monahan. I reside at 1644 Fetterman, almost 50 years. What I'd like to see, Mayor and Council, is to expand the weed ordinance of the city. Right now, the weed ordinance covers dandelions, weeds, and tall grass. And what I'm proposing is possibly to add tree suckers in there, shooters, tree suckers, whatever you might want to call them, that grow wild, because some of them can grow to a height of 3 to 4 feet rapidly within a couple of weeks. This happened to the neighbor beside me. It's a vacant house, and it's very detrimental to property values or sales. If you wanted to sell your house or, you know, any property values, it's unattractive. Maybe you could include it as being untended growth, which they are. You know, nobody takes care of them, nobody cuts them down. They keep growing. I looked at a few, Atlanta, Georgia, and they can say it's offensive. You know, that kind of growth is just offensive, not only to the property, but the property owners. Douglas has, it's a public nuisance to have things grow that high and to leave the yard in appearance. I don't travel a lot around town, but I'm sure there's other properties that are probably worse than what I've had next door to me. And I hope that code enforcement could work with council and maybe expand some of the laws there. Cheyenne has a real in-depth code ordinance with a lot of details in it. They go into the types of weeds that are banned or can be fined or whatever, but I think our ordinance just needs a little bit more teeth in it, and maybe to close some of the loopholes that are there where people can grow suckers because they're not a weed and never have to maintain their property. And that's what I'd like to see as council move on with it and maybe expand that ordinance.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Councilman Nell.
Just a comment. I'm with you. They just, in my neighborhood, the gas company just came and they're doing away with the old gas meters in the alley, and they're running the lines to the homes now and attaching them. And I just built a new house, so they've done that. I'm the only one in my alley without a meter, and the gas guy was back there just yesterday complaining to me about the weeds and how he can't even find half the meters, and he's shocked that people aren't running into them because the weeds have overgrown them and they're hiding them. And I know, Carter, you and I have dealt with one specific instance in North Casper, I think 4 or 5 times, where we still have not got a handle on that to this point that I'm aware of. So not only do we need to get teeth in this like you're asking for, I think we need more code enforcement people. I don't think it's working. And I mean, we're a perfect example of that just based off the continuing email that I'm dealing with this one patron in North Casper. So I'm with you. if there's anything I can do to help you.
Keep Casper beautiful, and the only way we can do it is to clean up the yards.
I agree.
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here, Cora. We appreciate it. So this is a question for our city manager. So it's those shoots that come up from the trees. And so is it, maybe this is even a question for our attorney, does that bypass, I mean, if they get to 3 or 4 feet in our yard and they look like a nuisance, can our code enforcement come in there and say, hey, this is, you know, obviously unsightly and damaging to the property value? So my question is that is that a loophole since they're not considered weeds? I guess either one of you if you want to answer that.
Mr. Mayor, if I could take a crack at it, and then Mr. Henley, if you want to fill in. My understanding is that the current ordinance does not deal with those shooters. Quakey aspens are a good example of what can happen when you have some of those in your yard. I like what Ms. Monahan is suggesting here in terms of untended shooters, because I'm sure some people actually want to grow a tree or two from those from time to time. And I would think that that would be a little more apparent, but I do believe that the code is not as clear about that kind of growth. And so I think it'd be a pretty easy proposal to consider if council were okay with the idea of my reconnoitering with the attorney's office and Craig's team a little more to evaluate that as an option and bring it back as a consideration if you're okay with that.
We okay with doing that? All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address council? Okay, please read the consent agenda title.
Establishing November 16th, 2021 as the public hearing date for consideration of new restaurant liquor license number 21 for Whalen Catering, Inc., doing business as House of Sushi, located at 260 South Center.
Chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing date just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Nell, second by Councilman Cathy. Please cast your vote
Did I not clear it?
in a moment.
Was it clear or not? No. That's okay. With Councilmember Pollock abstaining, all others voting aye, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of annexation and zoning of Tract 31, Dollar Number 3 subdivision. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 4 exhibits tonight. Correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carter Napier dated October 20, 2021. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune dated September 10, 2021. A notice of public hearing date. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune dated October 11, 2021. Annexation report summary. Exhibit number 4, Tract 31, Dollar Number 3 subdivision annexation report.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You all have seen the process that we're going through tonight as it relates to annexations. This really is no different. You'll probably recall as well that the petitioner would like to have access to utilities, and the unique circumstance that exists as the map doesn't fully indicate is that in fact Link Drive and Magnolia are undeveloped streets, and pursuant to typical annexation requests, we generally will ask that those streets be up to city standards upon annexation. In this case, where there's so much frontage and there's quite a bit of work to do, the petitioner has agreed that indeed they would participate in a local assessment district when the council determines it's appropriate to do, as a condition of being annexed into the community and as well gaining access to the utilities that they will extend into their property. And so with that, the annexation report that you have in front of you indicates that indeed there are quite a few improvements that need to be made adjacent to this small subdivision, if you will. We recognize that, but we also recognize that as a condition of this annexation, the property owner will participate in an assessment district and move forward in that regard when council's ready, to not be too repetitive here. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, we would suggest your favorable approval.
Okay. Council now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving the Dowler No. 3 subdivision to please approach the lectern.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm Sean Gustafson with ECS Engineers, 111 West 2nd, Suite 600. And as I've been here before, I would just entertain any questions. Of course, I'm in favor of this, but any questions you may have, I'm happy to answer them. So.
Councilman Nell.
Thank you. If this property was, of course, the current owner is willing to sign on when it's time to upgrade, but if they were to sell that property, is that something that would be disclosed to the new buyer?
Absolutely, yes. I've had many conversations with the realtor representing this property, so. And I've also, just so you know, I've also presented cost estimates on what it would take to finish those streets as they are, so.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? All right, this time I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues involving the Dowler No. 3 subdivision to please approach the lectern. Okay, there being no others to speak for or against the issues involving the Dowler No. 3 subdivision, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution finding facts pursuant to Wyoming Statute 15-1-402 regarding the annexation of Tract 31, Dowler No. 3 subdivision.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the resolution just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Nell, second by Councilmember Pollock. Discussion? Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 5. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits? Nope, let me back up. Let's finish the last part of that. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving the annexation and the annexation agreement for Tract 31, Dowler No. 3 subdivision and zoning said parcel M1 Limited Industrial.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Pacheco, second by Councilman Nell. Discussion. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
All right, now, I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration and transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 5. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 4 exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Fleur Tremmel to J. Carter Napier dated October 7, 2021. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication is published in the Casper Star Tribune dated October 25, 2021. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of website publication is published on the City of Casper website dated October 13, 2021. And exhibit number 4, liquor license application filed September 28, 2021.
Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief one. Council's been engaged in this conversation for quite some time as it relates to this particular license and ultimate transfer. There were stipulations that were attached to this license with the current owner. I would suggest that those stipulations are met and satisfied with this transfer, if indeed it's approved this evening, to 307 horse racing. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of transfer of retail liquor license number 5 to please approach the lectern. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Kyle Ridgway, 400 East First, Casper. I am CFO of 307 Horse Racing. I'm also involved as Chief Operating Officer of the parent company for 307 Horse Racing. Came before you a couple months ago with Mr. Taylor's liquor license situation. We had just gotten a deal done that day to acquire this license and presented that to the city attorney about an hour before we came before you. Gave a little bit of a presentation on our plans with that license, mostly to show in good faith that as our part of our application, we are parking the license because the initial concept for the project was for us to remodel the commissary mall and open a gaming location there, as one of our affiliates owns the commissary mall. That's a large project. We've engaged architects and engineers. We're still evaluating that project. The only thing that I do want to tell council is that it is possible that we come before you at some point in the next few months to move the location from the commissary to another location in Casper that would qualify. Obviously, we've got to make business decisions about what the cost is to rehabilitate the commissary mall for this particular project versus another use, as opposed to other opportunities that we've been presented with to use the license. So I don't want to, I don't want the city council to hold that against us, that we presented the commissary mall project, but we come before you in a couple months with potentially an alternative option that would actually put the license in use sooner, which is obviously what we would like to do. The commissary mall project, as you know, with supply chains and everything else, could potentially take us longer than the year, and we'd have to come back and justify ourselves on that. So we've evaluated other options, some of which we may choose to go forward with, but I don't have a lease or anything at this point in time that I can present. But I anticipate that, you know, in the next couple of months, like we told you, in October or September or whatever month it was I was here before, they all run together at this point with all these projects we have in all the different towns across the state. Like I promised, we'll continue to report to you on the status, either having a lease or giving construction updates on the commissary mall project. But it's not our intention to have this parked. Obviously, we want to get locations open and we want to put this license in use like we told you we would. So I just wanted to come before you and explain that and give you a little more background and an opportunity for anybody to ask me questions. But that's the situation with it, where we're at right now.
Councilman Nell.
Thank you. I don't know if you're aware or not of the headache that this particular license has caused this city. And now we're talking about transferring it to another entity that really doesn't know for sure when, if and when it'll be put in use again. So I guess my question is, can we put a timeline on this? This thing's been parked long enough. And is there a timeline we can put on this thing, almost like we did prior to your potential ownership, to make sure that this thing's being utilized and doing what it's intended to do for the city? I guess that question is more for the city manager.
I could provide some information that might put you at ease. We've spent $3 million to buy 150 of the historic horse racing machines that are being delivered this month. So I've got to be able to put them somewhere because I don't have them allocated. So when I tell you that I'm looking for a location to put those games in use, that's why. And so it's like, I understand what you're saying and I anticipated that question, but I also wanted to be transparent about the possibility that we're looking for another location that would put this license in effect sooner than what we would be able to do with the commissary mall. But that background may allay that for you, that if I don't get another location in Casper, those are just sitting in storage, not doing me any good. So we have a couple of opportunities. I was hoping to actually have a potential lease to present, but I don't, so I can't promise that. It was supposed to be delivered this afternoon. I never got my hands on it. So if I had my hands on it, I would have brought it with me.
Sure. And please.
And I'm happy for you to put a timeline on us of, you know, within the year. we have it active because I anticipate that we'd be able to meet that pretty easily.
Councilman Cathy.
Do you anticipate having your new lease or whatever firmed up by renewal time?
Renewal time would be when? Because I think.
February, correct?
Oh, yeah.
February.
I think that would be an appropriate time to make a decision on what other timelines or anything we may want to put on it then for the renewal of the license. If
Sure.
Thank you, that's fair. Please understand, we're not up here to make it difficult for you. We appreciate what you're trying to do. And the revenue that it'll bring the city, certainly. This license just seems to have such a black cloud over it, you know. So, good on you. I hope it works for you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ingebretson.
So I just want to clarify, so you're looking at parking the license for a temporary period in time, right?
Correct.
And so this might be for John or city manager. So can he park a license, a full liquor license to another establishment that already has a full liquor license?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. And actually, no, once they have the license, they can have it, but they have to operate it. They have to be responsible for it. They have to utilize it. They have to get permission from you as to which location it will be utilized. And so those are kind of protections that are in place. So they couldn't just, as a matter of their own volition, transfer it to someone else. And we're just going to consider this parked, but we're going to let Joe Blow use the license, if I'm understanding your question right. That just wouldn't work because it's your license. You're basically letting them use it. You grant the license. And but on the other hand, they really have a year pursuant to state statute to bring the thing operational, and so that's the balance here. So you know, with that, probably it's a good idea to look at it at the time of the February renewal deadline and just to see how they're coming along, and hopefully everything will be great then. But if not, then you know you can press ahead with some more questions, but you've got to give them, of course, the benefit of the state statute as well.
Mr. City Attorney, just to clarify, from the time that it's issued, they have a full year, correct?
That's correct.
So realistically, in February, it doesn't matter where they're at, they have a year from the date that it's put into place.
You know, that is correct because basically, well, that is what the state statute provides.
Okay. Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Thank you. Thanks, Kyle, for coming up and giving us some transparency and coming up and talking to us. Yeah, I mean, this is more, probably part of the discussion aspect of it, but I think you've got enough investment in this than previously when we were looking at this license, where we were kind of drugged through several years on it. And so it sounds like you're doing a lot of investment in this. And so it sounds like state statute also is going to back you to say, hey, look, you got a year to get this going. And it sounds like you'll probably have done in less than a year, but I'm willing to back that and support it. So,
anybody else?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of? At this time, I'd ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the transfer of retail liquor license number 5 to please approach the lectern. There being no others to speak for or against the transfer of retail liquor license number 5, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 5.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Nell, second by Councilman Cathy. Discussion?
It'll be nice to have it in use eventually.
Okay. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With council members Gamroth and Pollock having recused themselves and all others voting aye, motion passed.
Thank you. I now declare the public hearing open for the, actually, let's bring Councilman Gamroth back in. 6 cents. All right, and now to declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the issuance of microbrewery liquor license number 8. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Yes, Mayor, we have 4 exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Fleur Trumbull to J. Carter Napier, dated October 13, 2021. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated October 25, 2021. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of website publication is published on the City of Casper website, dated October 13, 2021. And exhibit number 4, liquor license application filed October 4, 2021.
Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Mr. Mayor, just a short one. This particular applicant is representative of a new business coming into the community, and as a matter of fact is the first business that will be opening in the Nolan project. And so it's a pretty exciting development as it relates to seeing that building come back to life here. The applicant does plan to be open in December of this year, and so we should be seeing some improvement really quick in order to accommodate that business if this passes tonight.
Okay. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. No duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issuance of microbrewery liquor license number 8 to please approach the lectern. All right, at this time, I'd ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issuance of microbrewery liquor license number 8 to please approach the lectern. There being no one to speak for or against the issuance of microbrewery liquor license number 8, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the issuance of microbrewery liquor license number 8.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Pacheco, second by Councilwoman Engebretson. Discussion? Amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
Councilmember Pollock having recused herself and all others voting aye, motion passed.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 9A1, certifying support for the establishment of a film office within the Visit Casper organization. Item 9A2, 2 construction proposals with CenturyLink for the Midwest Avenue construction project. Item 9A3, an agreement with Worldwide Industries for the CPU tank painting project. Item 9A4, an agreement with Wyoming Department of Transportation for the I-25 Casper Marginal project. Item 9A5, a contract with Rocky Mountain Power for the Poplar and First Street intersection improvements. And an item 9A6, a contract with Civil Engineer Professionals for the I-25 Casper Marginal project.
The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Pollock, second by Councilman Gamroth. Mr. City Manager, do you have any comments on any of those items? Didn't you say that? Yeah. No. Okay, any abstention or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote. Oh.
With all members vote.
Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Please read the consent minute action titles.
Item 10A1, the purchase of 1 utility golf cart from Colorado Golf and Turf. Item 10A2, the purchase of 3 3/4-ton pickups from Fremont. And item 10A3, authorizing appointments of council members Gamroth and Quest to the council's boards and commissions.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda items just read.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilwoman Engebretson, second by Councilman Gamroth. Any abstention or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
This time we ask council members bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. Councilman, no.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councilman Cassidy?
I would just like to thank, I didn't get a chance earlier, if you would pass on to Tracy, I would appreciate it, but I wanted to thank Captain Brown, Chief Cheney, Chief McFeeters, Chief Solberg for all of their effort and everything that they put into the report we had here and your presentation tonight about the health and the mental health of our people. I think that was very well warranted. So I do thank you and wanted to pass that on personally to you folks. Thank you.
Councilwoman Quest.
I would second that. I really appreciate that information and just really encourage and agree with everyone about supporting and doing what we can to support those services, and really appreciate the holistic approach being taken. I also just heard kind of anecdotally a couple of really positive feedback, or some really positive feedback on the health department's flu and COVID booster drive over the weekend, and it was really well received and really praised. So just wanted to extend that in gratitude, and glad that worked well. That's it for me.
Okay. Councilmember Pollock.
I do not have anything tonight. Thank you.
All right. Councilwoman Ingebrigtsen.
So I guess I'm just a little bit confused, and I would just like some more information, and email is perfectly fine. I'm not aware of exactly like the gambling, how many facilities that we are allowed to have. Is it something a little bit like our bars and restaurants? Are they regulated? Is there a number of people? It just seems like we're having a lot of these horse racing just popping up in every corner, and so I'm just curious on what our state statute and how we regulate that, or if there is regulation. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilwoman, I appreciate the question. If it would please the council, we could do a little looking. I feel like I have a real short answer to give, but I'd prefer to give a little more study to the question and present you a memo, if that's okay.
Everybody good with that? Okay. Councilman Johnson, do you have anything?
Nothing tonight.
All right. Councilman Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few thank yous that I'd like to get out. First, to the Casper Public Services Department. A water main broke on South Poplar Street late Friday night, 10 p.m., and it left 12 residences without water. So the first crew worked all through the night, and another one worked all through Saturday day to restore service. So I just wanted to thank those guys. I'm sure nobody loves getting a call, 10 p.m. Friday night, knowing that you're going to be working all night, trudging in water and working on a dark street. But really thank those guys for getting service to those residents so quickly. Also, a big thank you to Casper Fire and Rocky Mountain Power. This was also Friday night, I guess. I hope I'm not misinforming anyone, but over the weekend, at least, a semi-truck had hit a power pole on CY Avenue and Poplar area, and dropped the power lines about 4 feet over in that area, requiring the street's closure. They had just a power pole just swinging by the wires, so pretty crazy. So I just wanted to thank those guys for addressing that really quickly, getting it taken care of. It sounded like Rocky Mountain Power was quick on the scene to, do what they needed to do. So, several incidents over the weekend that required some overtime and stuff like that. So I just wanted to thank everyone that was on site for those 2 incidents. And on the note of City of Casper Fire EMS, I just want to thank them for their daily briefings. I think those are really informative and helpful. If you don't follow them on Facebook, I encourage you to do so. I think they make a habit of doing it just about every day. And so it's they give a really good overview of recent events that they encountered over the past day. They offer tips and they answer questions. Their tip over the weekend was to please pay heed to street signs and road closures. I guess while they were addressing some of these incidents, people were not obeying, not abiding by the cones, driving through cones and driving into hazard areas. This is unsafe for our city staff. This gets right in the middle of folks as they're trying to address serious, we had folks without water. And so if you're driving right in the middle of that as they're trying to fix those water mains, that doesn't help them. It doesn't help the folks that need water service. And so please don't drive through cones. Please follow the street signs. They're up there for a reason, and at least for the power pole one, I know that was like a serious safety concern. If a really tall truck would have been driving through there, that would have caused even more chaos. And so just please abide by that. And then thank you to everyone who voted in the special election today. It's important, you know, it's, I would consider it a civic duty, and so thank you for everyone that showed up at the ballot, at the polls today to vote on that. My last thing is we got an email to all of council from a gentleman that expressed some disappointment about City of Casper lacking an ordinance for snow removal on the sidewalks. I guess I was under the impression we had one of those. But we don't, at least as far as I could see. He mentioned, you know, he cited some ordinances from Sheridan and stuff that they have on the books, and this was in response to our recent discussions about the sponsorship of bus stops to remove snow. And so as we talk further about that, I would like to see maybe the potential of a city ordinance may be included in our conversations, you know, whether we need a city ordinance to address snow removal on the sidewalks. Because again, I guess I thought I was under the impression we already had one. So I thought maybe that would be worthy of including in our discussion as we talk about sponsorship of bus stops. That's all I have. Thanks.
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Just a quick comment. I think sometimes we tend to forget we're a community, and I keep telling myself I'm going to delete Facebook because I get tired of some of the negativity that's on it. But when we look at especially with the issues that are coming up and the issues that we face in the last several weeks, the understanding of the importance of mental health and taking care of those that are first responders and people that have pretty high stressful jobs. So I want to just continue to remind the community to know that be patient with one another. I think that it's a very frustrating time sometimes, and as we have very hyper political tribalism and everything else, that when we have our police officers coming here and asking for our help, you know, to be able to give them support, and I think we need to continue to do that, and just want to offer that. And I want the police to know that the council does want to support them and give them all the tools that they need to. So just thanks again, Captain Brown, for coming, and thanks to the police officers for all the work that they do, putting their lives on the line every day. So thank you.
All right, I just want to make a couple comments too on, I appreciate everything that was given to us tonight on where you're headed, what you're doing as far as these programs go. You know, I think it's important for first responders in general to keep in mind that when you make the call to them, you're generally in your weakest time, and you're showing weakness, and you're needing their help. And they all come to you, and they know that they can't show weakness. They got to take care of what your problem is, and then they leave that. And especially in law enforcement, you leave that to go take care of the next person, and it builds up over time. And so, again, whatever we can do to help out, I fully feel that we are all here to support that. I've seen it on both sides. I've seen it in the side of bringing new hires on and having that discussion that, unfortunately, the law enforcement officer that's starting his career is going to change. And the person, the spouse, the relationship that he's in, it may or may not last because a person changes so much in that job. And there's high divorce rates and everything else. But I've seen the other side where I've seen probably some of the angriest people, just because as far as law enforcement goes, angry people within the job that have just really let it get to them. And then once they retire and they get away from it and they get to a normal life, if you can consider that normal. I've just recently talked to another retiree that, you know, the guy used to get angry all the time, and you know, it's like, why are you doing this job anymore if it's bothered you that much? But he's back to a normal life again. He's seen the other side of it. So I've seen people go in and change, and I've seen people come out and change. But what's important is that change that takes place in the middle, and making sure that when those things take place and people get to dark places in their life, we need to have the tools in place to address it. It seems to me, across the board, first responder wise, you're certainly taking those steps to make that happen. And again, whatever you need from us to fix that in between, we're here to do. I attended the College National Finals Rodeo meeting yesterday. It was the last meeting for Commissioner Roger Walters. And Roger gave me a card and I'm going to read exactly what he said. It's to the city of Casper. There are no words to describe how much I appreciate your generosity. That wonderful bronze is resting on my mantle above the fireplace. This city has shown me so much kindness and friendly hospitality. It has been such a pleasure to be in a city that is so involved in college rodeo. Thanks for letting me be a part of your community. Sincerely, Roger Walters, Commissioner, National Intercollegiate Rodeo Association. Roger's been with us since the beginning of rodeo, starting off and then becoming the commissioner of rodeo. And I'm sure he's going to be back to attend several more, but we're talking 20-plus years of him being involved, and honestly, this one kind of breaks you up too, to get a thank you card from a person that you really respect and admire for everything he's done for college rodeo. So next chapter's coming. Got a new commissioner coming in January, and we're already off and running and making plans for next year. So that's all I've got on that. So the next meeting of the Casper City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, November 9th. 2021 in the council chambers, and a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, November 16th, 2021 in the council chambers. The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Cathy, second by Councilman Gamroth. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
We are adjourned.